Hello class. Today we're working on Chapter 1, Lesson 8, Dividing Rational Numbers. So let's just review. When you have the same sign, a quotient, another word for a quotient, this means to divide. Could be that you have one over the other. Either of these means to divide. So the same sign, quotient, is positive. So whether they're both positive, or they're both negative, they both equal a positive. If they have the opposite sign, the quotient is negative. So now let's look at dividing rational numbers with the same sign. So when we divide numbers, we would go like this. We're going to go 24.24 divided by 2.064. Well, we want to get the decimal point out of the beginning of the number. So we're going to move it over 2 places. Whatever we do to that number, we have to do to this number. So our decimal point is now between the 6 and the 4. So now 24 can't go into 20, so we're going to have to look at it going into 206. 24 goes into 206, well 24 goes into 100 4 times, and if we're doubling that, then we could go 8 times. Let's try 8. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 3 is 19. Subtract that is going to equal 14. Perfect. Now we have the decimal point, so put the decimal point in there. Bring 4 down. 24 goes into 144. Let's see. I'm thinking 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 2 is 14. Exactly 6 times. So our answer is, it equals 8.6. Please show your work as much as possible on your homework assignments. That way I know that you're actually doing it. Now, if we are looking at a fraction, we want to find what negative 5/6 divided by negative 2/3 equals. So whenever we're dividing fractions, it's the same as multiplying the reciprocal of the divisor. So if we look at this number here, and we're going to multiply the reciprocal just means the opposite. So the opposite of negative 2/3 is going to be a positive 3/2. So the first step is multiply the reciprocal of the divisor. So we're going to have negative 5/6 times negative 3/2. Notice a negative divided by a negative. Up top, what did we say that it's going to equal? A positive. So let me show you why. So the next step is to write the rational number as a product with -1. So we're going to pull the negative out by doing -1 times 5/6 times -1 times 3/2. And so if we're pulling that out, we then can use the associative property. And the associative property basically says you can change the parentheses around. So let's move this parenthesis over here. So now we're going to have -1 times 5/6 times -1 times 3/2. The commutative property says that we can switch things around, terms around, and it be fine. It's not going to change the value. So -1 times -1 times 5/6 times 3 over 2. So now if we want to use the associative property, right, we can change the parentheses. We are going to have -1 times -1 times 5 over 6 times 3 over 2. Well, -1 times -1 equals 1, which means 1 times anything is just that anything. So then we can drop those terms, and it turns it into a positive. So then all we have is 5/6 times 3 over 2. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 2 is 12. Those can be reduced. Each of them can be divided by 3. That's going to equal 5 over 4. This is an improper fraction, so to make it a proper fraction, divide 4 into 5. 1 time, 1 remaining, which means we get 1 1/4. So our answer is 1 1/4. For these next two, please try them on your own. Press pause, see if you can find the answer, and come back and check your work. Okay, if you got 13 for A, you are correct. Remembering to move that decimal point over on both sides. The decimal point does not affect our problem. And then for B, I skipped a few steps and just pulled the negatives out, so I realized that those crossed out, so it's a positive. And then making sure you remember this step of flipping it so that it's 6 over 1 instead of 1 over 6. Multiplying those out, you get 12 over 3. 3 is divided into 12 4 times. Your answer is 4. 1 can of iced tea holds 12 fluid ounces. A 2-liter bottle holds 67 3/4 ounces. How many cans of iced tea will you need to fill a 2-liter bottle? So what we need to do is we need to divide 12 fluid ounces into 67 3/5. So to divide this, we need to turn this into an improper fraction. So to do that, we're going to go 5 times 67 plus 3. 5 times 67 equals 335, plus 3 equals 338 over 5. And then this, the number 12 is a whole number. Whenever you have a whole number and you want to turn it into a fraction, you can just put it over 1. So to divide, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So we have 5 times 12, 338 times 1 equals 338. 5 times 12 is going to equal 60. Well, both of these end in an even number, so we know we could divide by 2 to at least reduce them down a little bit. So 338 divided by 2 equals 169. And 60 divided by 2 equals 30. So if we divide 30 into 169, 30 goes into, well, 3 goes into 16 5 times. So that's going to equal 0, 15, 150. Subtract that, we get 19. So our answer is going to be 5 and 19 over 30. Okay, so now we're going to write both mixed numbers as fractions. So to make it a mixed number, we need to multiply 6 times 3 plus 5. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 5 is 23 over 6. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7 over 3. And now we are going to write the negative number as a product with -1. So sorry, this was negative here. We're going to go -1 times 23 over 6 divided by 7 over 3. So now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So that's this number here. So now we have -1 times 23 over 6 times 3 over 7. So now we're going to use the associative property. So we can change our parentheses. So now we have -1, and then we have 2/3 over 6 times 3 over 7. Multiply that out. So 23 times 3 equals 69 over 42. So simplify. So, and then we have to multiply that by -1, which really just gives us a negative. So we have -69 over 42. So I know that 3 goes into both of those. So let's see, there might be a bigger number, but let's start with 3. 3 into 69 goes 23 times. And 3 into 42 goes 14 times. Oh, that can't be reduced any farther. And we can't forget the negative. So now we want to make it a proper fraction. So we're going to take 14 and divide it into 23. That's going to go one time. And 9 over 14. So we've got to remember our negative. So that means it equals -1 and 9 over 14. Go ahead and try these next 3 on your own. Press pause, see if you can figure it out. Come back and check with me to see if you got them right. Okay, if for the first one you got -6, you are correct. If the second one you got -7 and 7 over 9, you're correct. And number 3, -7.8. Don't forget that negative sign. Please show me your work on your notes. Your homework for today is page 45, number 5 through 21 odd. Happy homeworking!